My wife is always ranting and raving about how cute and adorable her wee pugs are. Don't worry, we're not going down that road again. Throughout human history, much religious and spiritual importance has been placed on the worship of animals, from cats in ancient Egypt to cows in modern day India. So today, I'll be talking about a secret society that adored their chosen animals so much that they actually risked being prosecuted by the Pope himself. The Order of the Pug. But before we get into it, this video is sponsored by private internet access. I have all the time in the world for VPN since they are very pro-internet freedom and very anti-censorship. In my line of work, a lot of people send me articles all the time to look at, and I'm always worried that one of these links might be an IP grabber. So before I click the link, I always turn my VPN on just to be safe. Private Internet Access is a leading no-log VPN service founded in 2010 with almost 30,000 servers in 70 countries, and it has dedicated apps for all platforms like Windows, Mac, iOS, Android, Amazon Fire Stick and Linux to offer simultaneous connections for up to 10 devices. It doesn't just protect your data, but it allows you to access the American Netflix, and this also works for Amazon Prime, Hulu, Disney Plus and the BBC. It has a kill switch and there is also absolutely no login, which is why it is PC Mag's Editor's Choice VPN. There are multiple payment options like PayPal and Bitcoin, and there is a 30-day money-back guarantee if you are not satisfied. So click my link down below to get private internet access and you will get 2 years plus an extra 3 months free for just $2.59 a month. In the 18th century, the Roman Catholic Church still held considerable power and influence throughout Europe. However, the Age of Enlightenment was coming into full swing by this point, and the arguments in favour of political and religious liberalism were severely undermining the status quo. To deal with this, the Church and various European monarchies often worked together to ban organisations or punish individuals who were seen as a threat to their power. And one such organisation was the Freemasons. And one of the Freemasons' main aims was to bring men belonging to all the world's religions together in order to reach full spiritual enlightenment. Or at least, that's just what they want you to think. Now, religious tolerance wasn't exactly one of the Roman Church's virtues at this point in history, and the popular organisation promoting religious solidarity was seen as a direct threat to their authority. So, in 1736, Pope Clement XII issued what was called a Papal Bill against members of the Freemasons. This was essentially a decree that declared that any Catholics who continued to be a member of the Freemasons would be excommunicated, and it also prohibited future Catholics from joining as well. Though a lot of Catholics simply done what they were told and pulled themselves out of the Masons, many done so begrudgingly, as they quite enjoyed being in a group that allowed them to explore ideas and be a part of something that was larger than themselves. So they thought that if they weren't allowed to join a fraternal order, they would just make one themselves. Around the year of 1740, a Bavarian nobleman by the name of Clemens August was alleged to have founded a new fraternal order, which would be open to Catholics only. Clemens was appointed as the Archbishop of Cologne, and he was also an elector to the Holy Roman Empire. And he also held the title of Grand Master as part of the Teutonic Order. However, Clemens wasn't given these appointments because he was particularly talented or anything like that. It was purely because of his bloodline and family connections. In fact, many historical sources claim that he was completely incapable of carrying out even the most basic requirements of each of the titles he held, and instead he would always be found partying and courting women. The reason why most people guessed that it was Clemens who set up the Order of the Pug was because it originally started in the German states. It was known to have a libertine atmosphere, and it had many high-ranking German nobles as founding members. So because of Clemens' background and his more hedonistic tendencies, we can safely assume that he just wanted another excuse to flunk his duties and party hard. To avoid angering the Pope, the order restricted its members to Catholics only, though some accounts claim that they were more than happy to break this rule on many occasions. Given that much of the order's membership was made up of former Freemasons, that really isn't too surprising. But this brings us on to our first question. How did you get in? Secret societies are notorious for their esoteric and often ridiculous initiation ceremonies. In fact, a former British Prime Minister was alleged to have entered into a fraternal order by getting deeply acquainted with a dead pig's head. Look it up. Tories are wild, man. But a fraternal society, as innocent sounding as the Order of the Pug, must have had something a lot more tamer than that, right? Well, let's just get on with the rest of the video. If a local order unanimously accepted a new member, the initiate is invited to attend the inducting ceremony, with full attendance of all of the branch's members. And before we go on, the official title for a member of the Order of the Pug was Pug. They just called themselves Pugs, which is what I'll be calling them for the rest of the video. Prior to entry into the ceremonial hall, the initiate is told about some of the entry-level customs and values of the order, as well as some of the dangers that might come to the initiate during the ceremony. After this induction, the initiate was then blindfolded and prepared for the first stage of the ceremony, which was to knock the door. But you couldn't knock the door like a man. You had to do it like a pug. So the initiate was told to get down on all fours and to paw and scratch at the door until one of the ceremonial overseers opened it to let them in. But getting in wasn't that simple either. Before going in, the initiate had to remain on all fours whilst the overseer put a bronze collar around their neck. They were then to be led into the ceremonial hall by the overseer, and they then had to walk in a circle, still on all fours, like a dog, about 9 times. At this point, I can't tell if this is supposed to get you into a secret society or a job with the London Met. Whilst all of this was going on, the senior pugs would be barking at the initiate like pugs, and would also be chanting ominous Latin phrases like memento mori, which means one must die. The combination of loud, shrill barking and ominous chanting was to apparently scare the initiate as much as possible to test their courage. It apparently worked really well, as one observer claimed that some of the initiates either trembled to the point of collapsing on the floor, or they got up and just straight took off running out of the ceremonial hall with their little collar still on. The barking also had a symbolic meaning whereby the initiate was regarded as a feral dog that was invading the territory of the domesticated and civilized pugs. As someone who owns pugs, I can assure you there is nothing civilized about them. After the initiate has had a nice little walk around the hall, like a good boy, they were then led to the feet of the Grand Master, or in this case, the Grand Pug. The Grand Pug then explains to the initiate that the order is not open to feral dogs like them, but there is hope, as they can possibly be tamed into a noble pug. The Grand Pug then instructs the initiate to stick their tongue out as far as they can so they can receive a branding by hot iron. Of course, the Grand Pug wasn't actually going to brand their tongue with a hot iron. Instead, he was just going to place a cold bar on their tongue. But the point of this part of the ceremony was to test the trust and loyalty of the initiate. But between the whole cosplaying as a dog thing and getting literally barked at by senior members of the order, the whole situation was so mental that the new initiates probably thought that they were actually about to be branded. One first-hand account testified that a new initiate was so scared about what was going to happen that when he got the cold bar placed on his tongue, he actually screamed as if he had really been branded by a hot iron. It's at this point that the ominous chanting from the hall completely stops, and instead turns into unrestrained laughter from the senior pugs. And to rub in the initiate's embarrassment even more, the Grand Pug begins asking the initiate some questions. Questions like, there's going to be a lot of word substitution here, because I don't want to get demonetized. Questions like, would you have intimate relations with a member of the order? Would you have intimate relations with a pug? And probably my personal favourite, would you put your Pringles can into the rear entrance of the devil himself? If the initiate refused to answer, the Grand Pug instead resorted to the would you rather line of questioning, so that the initiate had to admit to having butt fun with at least something. Some initiates would get so annoyed by all of this that they would actually start shouting at the Grand Pug to just quit it and get on with the ceremony. Though this was probably a fair reaction to everything that was going on, the mocking of the initiate did have a purpose. The order placed a very high value in establishing the bonds of friendship. And friendship, well, it involves a bit of banter, doesn't it? So even a weird pug-worshipping secret society understood that teasing helps build character, and it's what friends do. And it's also something that you should not be arrested for. After the Grand Pug calmed everyone down, it was time for the final stage of the ceremony. The swearing in of the new initiate. The initiate would swear an oath to keep the mysteries of the order an absolute secret and to do all they can to help their fellow pugs in times of need. After the initiate had taken this oath, only one more demonstration of loyalty remained. They had to kiss a pug's arse. Or at least, only the most hardcore of orders would get the new initiates to do that. Most of the local branches instead got the initiates to kiss the backside of a statue of a pug. After surviving this, the initiate is then shown the light by having their blindfold removed. When the initiate is able to finally see what's happening, they would find themselves completely surrounded by all of the other pugs, who were all pointing their swords towards the initiate's face. Pugake. Anyway, whilst they were all pointing their swords in the initiate's face, they would all also be holding a piece of cloth with the image of a pug in their free hand. The female members present would, at this point, surround the Grand Pug's altar while performing the Order's secret sign and placing their free hand on the ceremonial toilet. Yes, a ceremonial toilet. The meaning behind the ceremonial toilet, however, unfortunately, has been completely lost to time. At any rate, after all of this was done, the initiate was now a full, bona fide member of the Order of the Pug. But as we all know, being a member of a secret society is just the beginning. The real fun comes from ascending the ranks and eventually getting to the top. You know, most of them don't expect you to pay tens of thousands of dollars each time, like Scientology. Why is Scientology still a thing? So how would one go about ascending the ranks within the Order of the Pug? Well, the different positions below the Grand Pug were the supervisors, the overseers, various officer classes, and the pugs at the bottom. Though each of these positions had different duties, every member of the Order was considered of equal class to each other, with the exception of the Grand Pug, who was on top and above everyone else when it came to power and authority. Sounds a lot like communism. And there wasn't really any obtuse way of getting these positions either. Unlike the Freemasons, who have a series of rituals to ascend to the various ranks, the Order would just hold an election for the various positions, with the winners getting to hold their positions for 6 months. The Grand Pug itself was also an elected position, but it was considered a lifetime position, either until they died or they chose to give the position up. Also, unlike Freemasonry, the Order also permitted women to not only join, but to ascend the ranks the same way as the men. They couldn't get the Grand Pug role, but instead they got the role of Grand Mistress, which effectively just shared the duties of the Grand Pug. In Order meetings and at dinners, men and women would sit in alternating seats in accordance with rank, so women were pretty much accepted as real equals within the Order of the Pug. But out of all the dogs they could have chosen to represent their secret society, why the pug? Well, the founders felt that this breed best symbolised the traits of loyalty, trust, and steadfast character, and the Order made sure to rigorously enforce these behaviours into their members as well. Members had to attend every Order meeting throughout the year, and they were only permitted to miss out if they had severe health problems or they were abroad on business. They also had to strictly abide by the standards of behaviour, or they would just be instantly kicked out of the Order. Because the Order was made up of many former Freemasons, the Pugs prided themselves on their secret symbols, signs, and iconography. Various symbols and designs used by the Order were said to represent the primary virtues of loyalty, trust, discretion, tenderness, sweetness, and humanity. But the use of the pug itself is said to have held a much deeper meaning than that. In 1688, the Dutch stadtholder, William of Orange. Yeah, you'll remember him from the Glencoe video. Well, William of Orange sailed to Britain to overthrow the rightful monarch, King James, because he was a bit too Catholic for the English nobles' liking. However, the new King William had to accept limits of his rule through a newly imposed constitutional arrangement, which the UK actually still pretty much follows to this day. For many of the intellectual classes throughout Europe, this was seen as a very positive move towards a more liberal and fair government. However, many European countries made it pretty much illegal to voice support for systems of government that deliberately questioned their authority. Upon learning that William brought his favourite breed of dog, the Pug, alongside him to England, many people in continental Europe also started owning pugs as a show of support for the so-called Glorious Revolution that had happened in England. So the Order of the Pug may have also been an expression of wanting to limit the power of absolute monarchs throughout Europe, as well as limiting the power of the Roman Catholic Church, who had made life so difficult for the Pugs as former Freemasons. Thus, many of the customs that the order adopted incorporated the pug imagery and fermented its own kind of anti-establishment vibe. Members would carry silver pug medallions with them as a signal to other members. And yes, they also had a secret hand sign. This involved placing either the pinky finger or thumb under the chin, then scrunching one's face up like a pug, and also sticking their tongues out as far to the right as they could go. Like this. I mean, okay. Back when nobles were supposed to be prim and proper, a hand sign like this symbolised the anti-establishment flair that the order was aiming for. My pug also knows a secret hand sign. I would show you, but you know, laws. Much of the interior design and initiation rites used by the Pugs were said to be remarkably similar to those used in Masonic lodges. This isn't too surprising given that this group was intended to be a splinter offshoot of the Freemasons. Despite this though, the order did make an effort to establish their own customs, and they were even said to have arranged their own musical compositions for their own ceremonies and processions. Unfortunately, many of the customs and symbols that the order used have been completely lost to time, with the only real first-hand account being written by an anonymous author with the pen name Gabriel Louis Calabre-Perrault, who was suspected to be a staunch anti-Masonic Catholic. The Order of the Pug's influence was said to extend throughout many of the German states within the Holy Roman Empire, as well as England, the Netherlands, and parts of France. Coincidentally, these were the regions with the highest concentrations of Protestant movements and Enlightenment thinkers at the time. And because the order consisted of many rich and powerful nobles, they were able to commission porcelain sculptors such as Johann Joachim Kendler to create decorative pug statues for the order and its members. However, as secretive as the Order of the Pug attempted to be, they were eventually found out. In 1745, Perrault released his book, roughly called Secrets of the Pugs Revealed in English. This book detailed the initiation ceremonies and general activities of the order, which shocked the Catholic world. Some speculate that releasing this book was Perrault's attempt to be appointed as a Catholic priest and use this as a means to essentially kiss up to the church. Thus, the order soon fell under the same degree of penalisation as Freemasonry, with excommunications and formal government bans being enacted throughout the late 1740s. However, despite being allowed to continue in many other countries around Europe, interest in the order died only 10 years after its foundation. This was because attitudes towards Freemasonry were becoming less hostile as the years went on, which eliminated the need for a Catholic-only order. Plus, the thrill that many of the members got out of being in a completely secret society had been completely evaporated now that the secrets had been fully exposed. Some historians have estimated that very small local branches of the Order of the Pugs had survived in France up until the year 1907, though there's really not been any kind of major discovery about the Order's origins or practices since 1745. So sadly, as far as we know, the Order of the Pug completely died out. But at least we know how furries started. But before you go, you know the drill. You know what must be done. You have to. How else will I know you're a real fan? Anyway, boys, pucker up.
It's Count Dankula on YouTube. Everybody just subscribe.